There's one ever-present force that pervades all of our lives.
Pressure.
Whether we realize it or not, pressure impacts most areas of our life.
Like work deadlines, family commitments, or even sports competitions.
Pressure manifests in many ways.
From heightened nerves and anxious thoughts
to environmental discomfort and sensory shutdown.
These are all normal reactions, but tend to hinder high performance.
According to this week's book, achieving positive performance is simple.
Just redirect these natural responses to maximize their positive potential.
It's time for Dr. Dave Alred's book, The Pressure Principle.
Welcome back. You're listening to Motivation Minute. If you have a stack of books on your desk that you wish you've been reading, well, you've come to the right place because we discover the timeless truths in all those books you've been wanting to read so that you don't have to. This week's book is The Pressure Principle. Handle stress, harness energy, and perform when it counts. And this was a fantastic read, in my opinion, Jiraiya.
Yeah, and it was written by a world-famous coach who coached many different sports, different types of sports and different teams.
Like golf, cricket, football, rugby.
Yeah, I think his team, he coached the winning team in the 2003 England World Cup,
Wow.
as well as some other ones, a bunch of high-performing athletes. It says he's got his PhD in performing under pressure.
Seems like an unusual PhD.
Yeah, I didn't even know that's a field of study, performing under pressure.
Actually, I heard about the book because one of my friends who is a golf enthusiast had heard about this guy because he'd worked with some of the best golfers. And there were some really good examples about how in sports you can perform really well under pressure that this guy, of course, has demonstrated. So this will be fun to dive into.
Definitely. And I guess a lot of the principles, it said it applies to business or other types of situations where there would be pressure or environments that cause anxiety and how to deal with that.
Yeah, and maybe a good way to start out is talking about the definition the book put out for pressure, which is interference on ability to concentrate on a process. And what that does is it decreases your technique ability and your performance, which is interesting because we know pressure is the one thing that's constant in our lives. We always are experiencing pressure in some way. It doesn't stop our ability to perform. It just stops how we're performing.
Yeah, it seems like pressure is something that, we wish we could just completely eliminate, or it's almost like we're trying to be on this path to someday completely eliminate all anxiety and pressure in our lives. But I don't know if that's completely possible or if we're even meant to do that, But what it talked about in the book is how to use your anxiety and like restructure it as excitement or somehow use it to motivate you. It is an interesting concept that you could take anxiety or stress and think of it as excitement.
Yeah, or maybe not even as excitement, but as the books was saying, you start in your comfort zone, but then when you get into the anxiety realm, you're starting to get into your ugly zone. And I thought that was an interesting term because it's the zone where you're not comfortable and where things don't always go the way you want them to or the way you plan. But this book's talking about how when you get into that zone, it's how you use that zone that can be the big difference maker in how effective you are.
Yeah, and it said that pressure is a normal part of performing. It's an inevitable part of performing. If you're ready to perform, whether that's sports, it must be pretty intense to if you're a top athlete to perform in front of 10,000 people, or if you're going to speak on a stage performing in front of 10,000 people, or any of these things, you're going to feel a lot of anxiety. You're going to be really stressed and nervous. Just learning how to handle that.
Yeah. And how about we jump right into that? So what do you say if we jump into some of the factors that impact how we experience pressure and how to use the maximum of those?
Yeah, let's definitely.
Okay. I got my favorite out of all of them was a discussion on skateboarders. So the book had this chapter about how the skateboarding culture celebrates failure. Every time you wipe out, it's like the best thing. It's like the talk of the town in skateboard culture because it's the big deal. You wiped out. And basically failure doesn't exist. Now, I'm not a skateboarder, so, I don't have the same enthusiasm about skateboarders, but I found this interesting because, see, skateboarders have to practice. The book brought up this concept of implicit versus explicit learning. So implicit is where you're, learning a new skill and how it feels to be learning the skill, versus explicit is getting involved with experts and the theory of the skill. Well, if you think about it, skateboarders don't spend a lot of time looking at the theory of skateboarding.
No.
They just skateboard.
Yeah.
So they learn faster than, say, a golfer would, because a golfer has more information, but looks at all the theory of their putt. Or so the thing with a skateboarder is they do more with less information, and they try, they mess up, and then the key is they adjust. I think we're afraid of messing up, but the thing is, that's not the problem. The problem is we're not adjusting after the mess up. And if we were to work our lives like skateboarders, it would be really interesting.
Yeah, so I guess in adjusting, it's kind of like being comfortable. So once you're comfortable in the ugly zone, which you talked about is where your failure is frequent, often discouraging. If you're comfortable in that, then you can just move on and you can adjust. Kids will just, if they fall down, they'll just get up and keep going. Whereas adults, it seems we kind of give up easier.
Yeah, the book was talking about getting back that kid-like determination, because as a kid, you would pursue something like crazy until you were dead beat, and then you take an hour-long nap, and then repeat the whole process over and over again, no matter how successful you were. And you just kept hammering away, and that's how you learned very quickly. We've lost that passion as adults because we're afraid to put in all that effort that we weren't so worried about as kids, because, time wasn't a factor as a kid. And you weren't in the workplace having to perform with a group like that. You were able to just have fun. We need to get that fun back in it.
Yeah, I think you're right. He also talked about your posture, which is one point that the 12 Rules for Life book talked about.
Keeping your stand up straight with your shoulders back.
Yeah, it talked about how just simply looking at your posture, like when we're anxious, our body tends to fold in on itself, and we hunch over, and we're kind of tense and tight. And just simply, even though we are anxious in that moment, just kind of relaxing our body and standing up straight will actually kind of reduce our anxieties.
Right.
So I guess we're kind of controlled by how we feel, obviously, and actually, like going against what we naturally do and just standing up straight, taking a deep breath, and acting relaxed, even though we're not. I think what kind of makes you relaxed.
You have to go through the motions before you get your head in the same place your body is.
Yeah. So I guess just doing that, and I've actually done it recently a lot, where I just stop and I take a deep breath, and I just feel so much more relaxed. Just being aware of my, because one of the things too is I realized that for so many times I'm not aware when I'm anxious or when I'm stressed. I'm just kind of stressed in the moment as I'm doing things, and I'm tense. All of a sudden I'm just like, wow, I'm very stressed right now. So I just need to stop, take a deep breath, and try to, and that helps so much when you're aware.
That's cool. I struggle with actually thinking to take a deep breath. Yeah, I should probably work on that more. People tell me to do it, but I forget until I really should have been taking it long before I actually take it.
Yeah, so. in the middle of the day, anytime. Normally, I feel like we don't realize how stressed we are until the end of the day, or looking back, we're like, man, I've been so stressed all day, and it builds up.
The book was talking about rush hour, how that's the worst time because everyone's completely stressed out after a work day or right after they woke up, and it's just a bad time to be driving because everyone's hunched over at the wheel and with tense faces, tense grip on the wheel, and that's why we have problems in rush hour. People aren't relaxed.
It's that normal, I guess, stereotype of being stressed after work. A hard day's work and been stressed from work. I feel like we wouldn't have to be. It's not, stress is very bad for your body. It's just terrible. But, just to get stressed all day and then till the end of the day, it's even worse. It'd be better if we could stop every once in a while and realize when we're stressed and take a deep breath. Yep.
Going hand in hand with the posture is our words. And this book said, words are the most powerful drug because they reframe our situations. So it was talking about how if you choose your language specifically, like, for example, if you were to say, I'll never get to this skill, try reframing that as I haven't gotten to it yet. So it's like in learning, if you're discouraging yourself by saying, I'll never get this, just say, I haven't gotten it yet.
Yes, not yet. Like people, I've heard the same thing with when saying I can't afford something. Like when people say that all the time, well, I can't afford this, I can't afford that. It trains your mind that you can't afford anything or that you're poor or whatever. Like instead of saying that, you could say, I don't want to spend money on that yet, or I can't afford it yet, or I don't know, just instead of saying like, I could buy that, but I choose not to spend my money on that or something.
Yeah. So another principle, train like a dolphin. I liked this. I actually went to Baltimore Aquarium this year, and they were talking about how dolphins train with positive reinforcement. So I got talking to the trainer, and she's like, well, so I'm a science guy. I don't know anything about psychology hardly. And she was explaining to me the basics of negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, negative punishment, positive punishment. I won't go into detail. The thing is, dolphins use positive reinforcement. And this is new to me. What this is, you enforce the positive things they do and ignore the negatives. And see, we usually like to focus too much on the negatives and not reinforce the positives. Like at work, we hardly celebrate the wins on our team. They get only small notice compared to the problems we have. So this book said, if you ignore failure, you enjoy the process of learning, and then party when you get it right.
That's crazy. It's weird that we have to intentionally celebrate things, because I've realized, all the time I talk about the negative things or things I haven't done yet or that I need to do or things that are dragging on too long. And I don't realize, and if I look back, like even my reminders, I'll set a whole bunch of reminders, and just looking at them is kind of discouraging sometimes. I've all these things to do. But if I actually look back, if I look back at the ones I've completed, it's like, wow, I've gotten a lot of stuff done. So
I've probably completed 12 reminders today because I set them like almost every hour. But the thing is, I never celebrate actually completing them.
I don't celebrate as much the ones I actually got done, and I need to do that more. And same with it, the other principle, or the other point it talked about was, I guess it applies to coaching or training, but is to catch someone doing something right. So and we have to do this so intentionally because we automatically catch people doing something wrong, and then we, it's easy to see all the wrong negative things. But if you catch someone doing something right, and then praise them for it, or just randomly sometimes saying how much you appreciate them because of this or that, or thank them for things, that'll make them so much more dedicated and positive and happy and motivated than just pointing out all the negatives.
Exactly. Because we don't recognize the positives enough. And if we're not doing that, we're not encouraging it. Another fun point was they brought up learning to fly and something you learn in that process, which the thing that my instructor drilled in my head was aviate, navigate, communicate in that order. So it was talking about how when you get under pressure, like I remember from flight lessons, my instructor would throw so many things at me, and by the end, my head was hurting, like the headset was clamping on my ears, and I was just desperate to get on the ground and turn off the engine because it's just wearing on you, the sound and everything. And then he throws one more thing at you. So the thing you have to remember is fly the airplane first. And
don't
so
worry
you
about
use
all
that
the other
concept
things
in life, right? So you don't worry about all the little details. You focus on the most important detail you need to worry about right now that's the most pressing to get through that pressure. And you can practice that by deliberately giving yourself sensory overload situations where it'll make you want to shut down. If you make your practice built around that, you'll get more done.
So crazy. So you do that intentionally. So it's weird how pressure situations like that is actually something you can get good at. You can actually become good at being under pressure and handling it very well. But you have to do it through practice. You can't just avoid it because then you'll never get better at it. So you just have to, in a situation like that, being able to stay calm, when you're flying an airplane or crash landing or something, that's the most important time to be handle the pressure properly.
Yeah. And I remember from my flight lessons that the ones where I felt the most pressured, in retrospect, I learned the most on. But the ones where I thought, oh, everything went great, it was very smooth, wasn't that hard, I didn't learn as much on those.
Yeah. So
when you can make the situation give you more pressure intentionally, that's what you need to do.
Definitely. And then the balance is because, if we are under too much pressure, then we'll just get overly stressed, and I think
that's the problem.
We'll get burned out.
This book is so pressure focused and like how to do the best under pressure, but then there's that side.
It did say, how important pressure is and all that, but it said, it can get exhausting. So it says, I think it gave the tip of keeping training short and frequent rather than just dragging on, I guess, so that you don't get discouraged.
Yeah. So my number one takeaway from this book is to focus on the learning process and not the outcome. Because pressure is like our ultimate distraction. And the thing is, we know how to do our jobs or our life. But when you add pressure, we're distracted from that path and we start doubting what we know already. If we choose to not let pressure influence our outcome, we say the outcome is guaranteed. It's just we need to work on our process. We can approach life completely differently.
Wow, very well said. I really like that. I think that's my same number one takeaway is it's about the process. It's about, handling pressure and getting better at it, not trying to avoid it or hope that someday we can not have any pressure, which the only way to achieve that, I think, is to get better at managing pressure. But then there's a balance as well. You don't want to burn yourself out.
And I'm thinking about just every day at work, there are so many things that try to seek my attention and, add pressure to the situation. But when I know that I know how to do my job, I can not worry about if I'll do my job well. I just worry about, am I handling the pressure well? Because I'm guaranteed if I put in the right ingredients to get success out. Or maybe I'm not. I don't know. What do you think? If you have the right process, do you think the outcome's guaranteed?
I think the better your process is, the less pressure you'll endure. But the only thing is
you kind of trust the process.
Yeah, which is good, which is what you want. But sometimes, when you're figuring out things or learning new things, you don't know the process or you don't have the process yet. So that's when the pressure comes, and you have to really. But I think as you get better at it and you develop, you become better under pressure, so you can learn things and you can put better processes in place, and eventually you want to eliminate pressure, I guess, to an extent. But if you don't have any pressure, then you're not actually learning or growing, I think.
Right. It's kind of like the amplifier. It pressure pulls out the best and the worst of you.
Wow.
It like whatever you give it, it will just amplify to something bigger. And so it has a potential to grow or hurt you. Too often it's hurting us.
Very interesting.
Because we don't know how to deal with it.
Wow. Man, I'd say that was a good way to end the podcast. Wow, this has been very interesting. The pressure principle. And also, I'll mention Matthew Said from the last book we did called Bounce. He actually put in a good word for this book, or he did some review of the book online, which I thought was interesting because that was unrelated. But last week's episode was really good. If you guys want to listen to that one, make sure to go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, and you can get more of our episodes delivered to you every week where we talk about a book like this one.
And also remember to check out our survey at motivationminute.com/survey and keep leaving those reviews. Especially just take a quick minute to rate the podcast because it only takes a few seconds of your time and really helps us, even if you don't leave a review. Though we love it when you give us a little feedback.
Yeah, make sure it's 5 stars. But yeah, that's something you can do really quickly. Just hit the star rating and that'll help us out.
So thanks, guys, and we'll see you again next week.